Welcome, everyone, to the inaugural episode of the Lipp Men on the UFL. And I am one of the Lipp Men, Jeff Lippman. Some of you know me as Evil Dose. It's SO right there. And obviously, to my left is my much, much older brother, Jake.
How's it going? It's kind of funny, not funny, because I don't think I'm older. Last I checked, at least according to my birth certificate, I'm not the older one.
Hold on. Well, I am a member of AARP, so let me see what's happening. Let me take my meds. Oh, it's my son. Sorry.
Oh, there you go.
There's our first botch of the episode. Wanted to get that out of the way immediately. They always say lead with a joke. So for those of you out there who are new to Unpopular Review, thank you for tuning in. Kindly hit like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell so that you never miss any of the shows. We are on the UPR Sports feed right now. So hopefully those of you who sent the feed earlier got it. I'm not 100% because I'm sort of a tech idiot. But you can enjoy many things on the Unpopular Review family, including the wrestling side, where we cover pretty much every show from both major promotions and a little bit more than that. And UPR Entertainment, where they do lots and lots of fun stuff there, reviewing movies, TV shows, and things like that. Sometimes they have a game show. But we're here to cover the UFL. And Jake and I want to let you know that we didn't watch the XFL. We didn't watch the USFL, at least not the recent seasons. We're not coming in this as insiders. We're coming in this as people who probably put the last 2 or 3 weeks of some work in and got up to speed. But we are learning the league. We are Spitz, super fans in training. And we want you to join this adventure with us. And hopefully we'll all become fans together. Anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what spring football looks like. Truthfully, I've never been a huge fan of the spring football leagues just because you don't know what their longevity is. And, we've seen it just recently with the XFL and with the pandemic and then the USFL, it kind of was in their best nature to merge. It was kind of their only way to stay relevant and successful. And so I'm really excited to see what this is. I think this league does have the chance to have some longevity and some sustained success. And, I'm a big football guy, born and raised. We had our Ravens season tickets growing up, and that's kind of what sparked my interest. Not bad for a running back. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, they looked great this year. And, hopefully we can see some future practice squad guys and some back into the roster guys from this upcoming season come to the rosters and, make an impact in the NFL this upcoming season.
Absolutely, and there is definitely some ties to that. And by the way, Jake, didn't you do some writing? Didn't you work with some publications to cover the ratings?
Yeah, back in my heyday, I used to write for Ebony Bird, which is Sports Illustrated has a fan-sided program, and so that was the Ravens network. And I wrote a number of articles over a couple of years. Been quoted a couple times by BaltimoreRavens.com and have done a lot of interesting collaborations and have fun with that. And I've also done some work in the MMA sphere. I have a podcast that I haven't done in a while, but we're bringing it back, Behind the Cage Door. So this is a lot of fun stuff in the sports industry, and I'm just excited to expand my horizons a little bit.
That's awesome. And it is possible that we may even be able to bring Behind the Cage Door onto UPR as well. So who knows? I mean, I shouldn't be talking out of school, but that's sort of like one of my gifts. So as far as this goes and spring football, there's actually, I too am have been scarred by spring football before. I was one of the fans of NFL Europe. I really liked, I know that was more summer ball, but I don't know if you remember this. When you were very young, you came with me to the bank. And while we were there was a fire hydrant of a man who was maybe 2 or 3 inches taller than me. For those of them, I'm about 5'10". I am exactly average height. And he was probably as wide as he was tall, and he seemed like he was 3 foot thick. And I looked at him like, you got to be Kelly Gregg. And he's like, yeah, man, how you doing? Came over and shook our hands. He shook your hand and all that. Then we went to a couple of Ravens fan festivals, and we're both Baltimore guys. Jake doesn't live in Baltimore anymore. I'm not going to say where he lives. It's parts unknown. He can reveal where he lives if he wants to. But Baltimore's one of those cities where it's not unusual to run into Jonathan Ogden all over the place. Actually, he owned a house where we used to live. And when he wasn't there, his brother Michael Ogden was there, who looks a lot like him, except 4 inches shorter. So you could tell, but you always had to look twice. It wasn't unusual to run into Chris McAllister getting carry out. we've seen Ray Lewis a couple times, including at his ill-fated restaurant. We saw Cal Ripken a bunch of times in the diner and things like that, and just walking around and being a guy. So Baltimore's one of those places where it's not unusual to see the local celebrities, but you're not here to tune into that, or maybe you are. But with the other spring football, I mean, I don't know if you want to cover the history of the USFL and the XFL. I think that you indicated you want to, so why don't you give that a shot?
Yeah, I mean, I think the history is very interesting, and I think one legend in Baltimore that you failed to mention is Joe Flacco. I actually baked his wife cookies once,
Oh,
but we might be mentioning that last name Flacco in a little bit, so just a little precursor into some of what we'll be talking about later. But I mean, we're here to talk about the UFL and what is it? And really, the UFL, as we kind of mentioned, the XFL and the USFL has merged into one, the UFL, and this got approved in November. So it's only been about 7 months that it's been a real full-flung thing. But if you really look about it, the USFL started in 1985 in its last edition, and it had some really big stars. I mean, first off, Herschel Walker, Jim Kelly, Doug Flutie, some guys that ended up having really good sustained NFL success were a part of the USFL. And these were guys that actually chose to go to the USFL as opposed to the NFL. And I think one thing that's pretty interesting is Donald Trump was the owner of the New Jersey Generals, I believe they were called. And it was on his accord to try and compete directly with the NFL. And that was kind of their demise, where they decided to move their season from the spring to the fall, which led to an antitrust lawsuit, which in the end, I'm sure, you can speak a little bit more to that, but the USFL actually won. They won a dollar. And because of antitrust laws that tripled. So they won a whopping $3 before going bankrupt. So really big success in the courtroom, not as much success on the football field back then. And now it's getting reinvigorated. The XFL came into circulation in 2001. I was barely alive at that point. And they were a thing. And then they came back and the pandemic hit. And so both of these leagues have, been around, but now they're back and they're together. And in their most recent iterations, each league had 8 teams. And now the 2 leagues are combining to be a total of 8 teams, 4 teams from each league in each conference. So it's going to be very interesting to really see what is going on and how the merging of the leagues combine. And we'll talk about rules later. There's some rules from both sides of the coin that are being added and taken away and modified. And, it's going to be very interesting to see how this league can develop talent as well as, be an innovator for the NFL and for, being the second league in pro football, which is something that we haven't really seen. I mean, the only league that's really stuck around is the Arena Football League. And I guess you could call it Canadian Football League, but in American football, this would be the second league, the minor league system. So there's a lot that really can go on and will go on. And there's going to be a lot of experiments that are going to happen. But I don't know if I missed anything or if you want to add to it a little bit more.
No, I think you did a great job, but I'll add a little bit of color just because I have a little institutional knowledge, and I was alive during all points. And I mean, in '85, I was obviously 70 years old now. I was probably about 15 or 16 at the time. And the origin is that Donald Trump wanted to have a NFL franchise, and the owners refused to let him. So he started this league, and I think a lot of people advised him to not go against the NFL, but he decided to do it. You rightly corrected that Herschel Walker was his first giant get, but the other players, and by the way, I didn't do any research into this, but I wasn't sure that Doug Flutie was there. I could have sworn he was, but I knew he had a great CFL career. For anyone who doesn't know who Doug Flutie is, he does Nugenics commercials with Frank Thomas now, but he also threw the Hail Mary pass. It's sort of legendary. I think it was it Cordell Stewart that caught that pass?
I mean, we're outdating me. I'll just go with he's a Buffalo Bills legend.
Okay, well, yeah, he is that. He was a Canadian football legend as well. But anyway, so he started the league, and it lasted, I think, 3 seasons, and that was the end of it. The XFL was started for the you wrestling fans was by Vince McMahon, and it was in response to the NFL instituting a lot of rules for safety, where NFL, a lot of people like to call it the no fun league. So the XFL was supposed to be for fun. There were much less relaxed rules. The players got paid bonuses for being on the winning team and less money for being on the losing team. It was sort of, they could put whatever they wanted on the back of their jerseys for names. There was famously a guy named He Hate Me. I might be wrong about this. I probably am, but I think he's Rod Smart, and I think he ended up in the NFL. I could be wrong about that, Rod. If you're listening and I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But there were some people from the XFL that made it to the NFL, but the XFL didn't last long, like many of Vince McMahon's non-wrestling projects. Sort of like Donald Trump and a lot of his businesses didn't, outside of his comfort zone, didn't work out very well. So about 16, 17 years later, Vince McMahon tried to bring it back. And as you said, the pandemic hit. It doomed it almost immediately. Around the same time, the NFL backed a late winter league called the AFL, which actually was getting pretty well received. It was getting pretty good ratings, but for whatever reason, the NFL, like 5 games in, decided it wasn't getting its return on investment and just shut it down. And like only the NFL could get away with that with the networks, because everybody else seemed to be happy except for the NFL. And to this day, I don't know the reasons. But sort of in the dust of that, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, former WWE, talent and current WWE talent as well, because he's back, if you can smell what The Rock is cooking, and his then wife, now ex-wife, but still business partner. Actually, I think they were divorced by this time, but still business partner, bought the XFL from Vince McMahon, which apparently cost Vince about $100 million. He bought it for a song, $5 million. And then you said so then they played, and neither one of these leagues really had a whole lot of success on TV. Some teams had more success than others with fans, but it sort of flailed. And as you pointed out, these leagues decided, hey, maybe we should merge. And everybody was shocked at how quickly this happened. For a deal so big, for it just to happen, like overnight. Some of the people involved, I mean, them. First of all, there are no franchises. The league owns all the teams. I know that they're interested in moving to the franchise direction, where they have actually league owners, but the league owns the team for now. And the director of football operations is Daryl Moose Johnston, legendary Dallas Cowboys fullback. And he played some pivotal roles in some of the rules. There's one rule we'll get to where he was very much against adopting it, but after he realized that 2 of the XFL players became NFL All-Pros on special teams, that changes minds pretty quickly. So are there any other, I think I added enough color to it. You correctly stated that they both had 8 teams, and we could probably go into what happened with the 16 teams that turned into 8 at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a lot that we can talk about, and there's a lot that's going on with the league itself. I think for anybody that's watching and was a fan previously, let us know down below in the comments, and maybe fill us in on some of the things that we're missing, as we didn't watch these seasons live. But we're going to talk about the divisions a little bit more now.
Yeah, I think first I'm going to say what happened with the draft. So what they did is that the draft was basically 2 phases. So the teams that ended up in the XFL division got to draft first from the XFL teams that were terminated, and the same for the USFL. So the USFL teams got first dibs at drafting USFL team players for teams that no longer existed. And then the second round is that you could draft from both leagues. So, oftentimes I know when, the Ravens have had thinner years, and they, played against maybe like a Bengals team that was having a lot of thinner years. And then you said, geez, if I could combine some of the players from both teams, we'd have a perfect team. We'd win the Super Bowl every year. Well, they sort of got to test that a little bit, though, that they took turns drafting, of course. And the teams they started, well, their preseason is a little bit interesting in that they don't really have a formal preseason. There's no preseason games, but there's scrimmages, and they're all in the same place. They're all in Arlington, Texas, not Arlington, Virginia. So scouting and spying and things like that. I don't know how that kind of security, if there's any integrity to it, or if they're just saying,
And I think we should actually talk about that briefly, because it's
go
not just
ahead.
those scrimmages. It's also practices. These teams, they might have home bases. You have the Arlington team, and you have the Memphis team, and you have the Houston team, but they're all practicing and training in Arlington together, and they're sharing locker rooms. I mean, there's already a Snapchat that kind of went viral by one of the kickers, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But he has to share a locker with another kicker on a different team, and this is already causing a little bit of animosity. And I'm very curious to see, what kind of spying is going to go on. Is there going to be that integrity that needs to be upheld for this to be a good functioning league, or are we going to see some things that are a little shady and might shift the balance of the teams based off the fact that it is, like you said, one ownership for all 8 teams. It's not 8 different teams competing against each other.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Now, to one of my new cyber friends, a shout out to Marvin the Movie Monster and to his puppets, including the one Triple H. I'm gonna copy you right now. You just said Snapchat and me in Triple H puppet version. What the hell is that? So I know what Snapchat is. I just don't use it. I don't use Instagram, but I understand that's what people use these days.
Us kids these days, we take pictures of the ceiling and send it to people for streaks. That's basically the summary.
Are you still a kid?
I like to consider myself one.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I learn,
Young at heart.
Learn things all the time. So yeah, those are really good items there. So we already said The Rock is the owner, or Dwayne Johnson. There's an interesting thing about him. He has a partnership with Under Armour. So the uniforms got switched over to Under Armour, and his logo is the Brahma Bull. For those who don't know, The Rock, in part of rejoining WWE, he also became a board member of Endeavor, which owns WWE and UFC. And as part of the deal, he got like $30 million worth of stock. He got a seat on the board. But he also was granted all of the trademarks that had to do with The Rock. All of his intellectual property is now his. It's not owned by WWE, including the Brahma Bull. So the logo of a Brahma Bull that was The Rock's original tattoo before he got all of the tribal tattoos is on the back of every single jersey. Why does anyone care about this? Because there's a team in San Antonio called the Brahmas. And it might be very confusing to other teams if they're playing the Brahmas, or if it might be confusing to the Brahmas if they're playing other teams and they see a familiar logo on the back of the jersey. So I would suggest that when they do practices, that they learn how to train themselves to ignore that, or to recognize whatever the differences are in those two logos.
Yes, and it's going to be certainly weird seeing the Brahmas with their logo and then every other team with a little Brahma patch on the side of the jersey. And that's definitely something that's going to take an adjustment. But I think that Under Armour partnership is essential for the league, for its longevity and for its success. And I think that having Under Armour, which is reputable and they make really good quality jerseys, the league wants to keep its branding to its original core from the original teams. But I think Under Armour is going to give it its own little spin. And as long as you can get over the Brahma Bull being on every jersey, I think it's going to be a great partnership that's going to be very lucrative.
Yep, no, definitely. And Under Armour also has Maryland roots, but certainly establishes really quickly. I mean, it's probably the number 2 sports brand behind Nike, if even number 2. I mean, past Puma and Adidas and all those others. So yay, Maryland. So we talked about the draft. So let's talk a little bit about who the leagues are. And yes, folks, when I look over, I have my laptop open and I am cheating. So, I'm not cheating if I tell you that I'm cheating. So the USFL conference is the Birmingham Stallions. As I understand it, they were the champions back-to-back in the USFL, and they are highly favored to repeat that again. Apparently, their defense is a brick wall, or at least the front 7. I think that the question mark is their secondary, that they're going with the youth movement that might gel wonderfully, and who knows. So Birmingham Stallions, the Houston Roughnecks, the Memphis Showboats, and the Michigan Panthers. The interesting thing is, apparently the Memphis Showboats, I think, and the Houston Roughnecks, they just switch cities. They basically swap the teams and names out, which I don't know why. Because it's all...
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not 100% sure with Memphis. I know the story with Houston is that Houston had teams in both leagues. So there was the Houston Gamblers, and then there was the Houston Roughnecks. The Houston Roughnecks are the team that are carrying over, and they have switched names. So the Gamblers should be the name according to the conferences. I'm assuming based off the connotation, they didn't want Gamblers as one of the names. So they decided to carry the Houston Roughnecks branding over the Houston Gamblers. And that's how the Houston Roughnecks continued being a thing.
You know what? I think that first of all, it's really interesting, and thank you for adding that. But I think that you're exactly right. And I'm not, they're actually, but about the gambling thing, there is gambling on the UFL,
Yes.
and there are gambling sites and chats and links. So they're not exactly hiding it. But showboats, I mean, people go on showboats because in the water they can gamble when they're on those shows. So I don't know if they wanted it out of the name or not, or maybe if they're thinking about expansion, that's sort of an obvious name for Las Vegas or an Atlantic City or something. So anyway, so that's that with that. So the XFL conference is the Arlington Renegades. Now, my understanding is that the Arlington Renegades were the champions of the XFL last year, but they got into the playoffs with a very middling record, and they're an example of a team that got hot at the end. But apparently they've gotten stronger, and they may have one of those nice problems. Well, it's not always nice, but a coaching problem of having a quarterback that's a veteran they trust, but also a young quarterback who's got the moves, and they may have one of those, two-headed monster situations.
Yep, and we'll definitely talk more about the teams and the coaches and everything more in depth. But just to mention, Bob Stoops is their coach, legendary Oklahoma football coach. So they are one of those teams that they really struggled to get their footing, and then they found their footing at the right time, and they got hot, and they took it all the way to the championship. A lot of people were not high on them, were not high on their quarterback situation, and Luis Perez, we'll talk about him more. He really kind of put it all together as someone who did not have a huge college football career, who did not make it to the NFL, but he's really established himself as one of those spring football. I don't want to call him a journeyman because that might sound a little negative, but he really has established himself within the spring leagues, and he's going to be a guy that's very intriguing under the legendary coach. So they're a team that's going to be interesting to see. Do they start off like the first half of the year last year, or do they start the way that they finished last year? And that's going to be an interesting narrative to follow.
Absolutely. Can you believe this one has half of my DNA? He's so handsome and well-spoken. Sheesh. God. I don't know where that came from. So the other teams in the XFL division are the DC Defenders, the San Antonio Brahmas we talked about, and the St. Louis Battlehawks. So listen, we're both Baltimore origin people. Well, my adult life, Baltimore origin, you origin. DC is close, but DC and Baltimore are not exactly aligned cities. I don't know that we necessarily have any contempt, but we don't have any love either. We don't consider ourselves the same market. For years, we had to get the Redskins games, even when the Ravens were here, Nationals too, but it's not reciprocated in Washington. I think Baltimore has more of a chip on its shoulder than DC. I'm not sure DC really knows that we even exist. But I guess what I'm getting to is I'm not sure, like, we have to choose a team that we're going to root for. And I don't know if I can get behind rooting for a DC team. Now, you and I don't have to root for the same team. Actually, it might be fun if we don't. But I'm not sure if that's just a quandary I have. So, folks, by the way, we do have the ability to have a live chat, so you can enter comments in and then we'll see them. And we'll try to get to them. And as we both get more technically proficient with this system, we can navigate. Actually, I think I'm the only one that has authority to do that now. But as we get a better flow, we do it. Also, usually on UPR, we run commercials. And you know what? I think I'm going to do that right now. So you're going to hear more from us right after the commercial. So don't go anywhere, and you'll see some of the great fine offerings that UPR has, including the collision review with a funny little clip with me and my wife. So then they remind us about Adam Copeland, definitely not Edge, absolutely not Edge. And if it was Edge, it would be the guitarist from U2, about the Cope Open recap. So we get the video of the Cope Open recap, and we learned that Adam Copeland, who works every week, is not working tonight. I don't believe he certainly didn't work on Rampage, and I don't believe he worked on Dynamite. And we're going to hear from him next week. So maybe this Cope Open Challenge has taken a little bit more out of the 50-year-old than we thought it did. What do you think about the Cope Open Challenge?
I like that.
She likes it. Well, there you go. That's all you need to know. Speaking of things we like, is Tony Schiavone. And what he has with him is the #1 contender to the AEW World Championship, according to the rankings that dropped just a few days ago. And it is Swerve with Prince Nana. So everyone's doing the Nana dance. Let's do the Nana dance. Swerve while you drive. Swerve while we drive. But he doesn't do this thing. We're going to just add that. Can you do that now?
Yes.
Let's see. Then you go like this. Yeah. And then this.
Very sexy.
It is very sexy. That's exactly right. This is how I get a wife like this. Sexy dances. Nana stole my dance. Okay, so that was not a hostage video. I know it looked like one for a while.
She definitely knows a lot about wrestling.
Yeah, she loves wrestling so much. Yes, I made. I was not supposed to do a solo show. We don't generally have solo shows on Unpopular Review, but no one else was available. So I said, please sit with me for a while. And then, obviously she was not really interested. She doesn't watch Collision. She was mostly on her phone, and I took her by surprise. But when when you see the dancing, the eyes light up, because that is, that's the bossa nova. That's the dance of love right there. So
yeah,
anyway.
and I might be your son, but I definitely have to say I would think I'd win a dance off.
Oh, I don't know. Challenge accepted. So for the crest of arms that we have for our family cycle. So here we go. So let's go into some of the rules. At some point I want to go into the front office, but I have the rules up right now. And so their goal is to be innovative and to try to combine some of the rules of the XFL and the USFL and give us the best of both worlds. Now, most of the rules are similar, if not identical, to the NFL. So most of the game will be familiar, but there are some different things which are designed to make coaching decisions and strategy and risk-taking rewarding or non-rewarding. So there'll be a lot of second guessing. There are experienced refs in this league. We already touched on some of the coaches and people, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And by the way, folks, we're just going to touch on coaches and players and teams this week, but our next two shows, taking you through the preseason, next week we're going to do a deep dive into the USFL or the XFL. We haven't decided yet. And then the following week, we will do a deep dive into the division that we didn't cover next week. So again, we're very much doing this with you, and hopefully it will be a slow absorption process for all of us. So by the time that the league starts play, which is March 30th, that everyone will be up to speed or feel like they're up to speed and feel like, they learned at a slow pace with us, because we're not insiders. We're just creaking into the door and we sort of just, poking our head into it. So some of the other rules that they have, so the UFL has adopted the XFL's point after touchdown options. They're going to have their kickoffs will resemble the USFL's more traditional style play, with a modification about moving the kickoff line back to the 20-yard line. And there's been some slight modifications for rules that overlapped, including alternate possession options in the fourth quarter. Both leagues implemented opportunities in 2023 for teams that are trailing, or if the scores are tied. In 2024, the UFL will offer a 4th and 12 from the 28-yard line. So those are some things high level. Here's the point after touchdown options. And this is where things might get a little bit interesting, a little tricky, and fans will probably lose their minds when things don't work, and they'll love it when they succeed, except for this one. From the 2-yard line, you get 1 point for a successful try. I have a question for you, though. Is this like kicking an extra point, or it has to be an offensive play?
No, so they are eliminating the extra point. Special teams is going to be very different in the UFL. To my understanding, it seems like teams might even decide to take a two-kicker approach, because you're not going to be taking those short yardage extra points. Accuracy is not going to be as important in the UFL. Your kickers are going to be really primarily focusing on the kickoffs and on the field goals if a team chooses to go for a field goal. So when it comes to extra points, you're either going from the 2-yard line for 1 point, the 5-yard line for 2 points, or from the 10-yard line for 3 points. So it's essentially a 4th down play to get yourself those bonus points after a touchdown. I don't even want to call it an extra point, because it is far away from what a traditional extra point is, but it's really going to provide more offense and a little bit more excitement. And I'm very curious to see what the strategy is, because a 10-yard play doesn't sound that daunting and intimidating. But when you think about having one play to go 10 yards, is it worth it to get triple the points? Or do you just want to go from the 2 yard line and run a little tush push or a running back power, which might be a little bit more of a higher percentage of being successful? So it's going to be very interesting seeing what the strategy is going to be enacted, and what does this really do to a team? Are you going to have different personnel groupings for each play? Are you going to have these pre-scripted? I mean, there's a lot of questions, but this is very different, very innovative. I don't think this is something that the NFL would adapt in the future, but like we said, this is something where the league is going to pride itself on innovation, doing things differently than we've seen traditionally in the past, and deviating from the norm and seeing what sticks. I mean, they're throwing mud at walls and seeing what mud lands.
Absolutely. And there's going to be a lot of factors involved. I mean, I think one of them is obviously how far behind you are. Probably one of them is how ahead you are and how many points you want based on math. And I'm also sure it's based on game flow. If you've been able to pass the ball at will, you're probably going to do more of that. If you've been able to run the ball on will, you may be a little bit more conservative with that. Who knows? But there's going to be lots of choices, and some of them, just like how 2-point conversions now are getting more obvious to NFL fans to, after figuring it out for probably half a season. I'm sure this will get a little bit more intuitive to us, but we're going to be wrong. And it's going to be interesting to see tendencies of the different coaches and in different situations. And I'm sure that the commentary teams will have a lot of words on that. And the commentary teams, by the way, ESPN announced their commentary teams, and they're experienced commentary teams. All I have to be honest, I don't know who any of these people are. So, and I think Fox was supposed to announce it Friday. I don't know if they did or not. Do you know?
I didn't see the broadcast teams. I did see the distribution of games. So there's going to be games on Fox Sports 1, on Fox, on ABC, on ESPN 2, I believe, as well. They have all their games broadcasted all among everything, and it's going to be broadcasted live to just about everywhere in the States. So it's going to be very easy to see these games, and they really are putting a little bit of an investment into this.
That's really cool. I mean, the one thing that makes it's going to be difficult is, it's going to be hard to tell traditional viewership by Nielsen ratings because they're going to be on so many platforms. I mean, I guess if all these networks are on TV, they can figure out the aggregates and I wonder if it'll be reported, but that's something we'll have to keep track of, because obviously how the league performs on TV is going to have a lot to do with their future. I mean, ticket sales are also something that's important, but nothing's more important than TV.
And their tickets, they're going to be very affordable. So if you're in one of these cities that have a team and you're looking for something to do on a weekend, tickets are going to be about $15 to $25 a pop. So it's going to be very affordable. And the league really is going to be making its money mainly through these television deals and the endorsement deals and the partnership with Under Armour. This is really supposed to be designed to bring fans in and not push fans away with extremely high ticket prices.
Yep, all of that is true, and you probably get really good seats in all of the leagues. Though I will say the one exception might be St. Louis, because apparently they have a really rowdy and ready fan base. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know this part I'm not wrong about. St. Louis has had the St. Louis Browns, the St. Louis Cardinals, and the St. Louis Rams in the NFL. Well, it might be in the AFL, and all are no longer in St. Louis. So St. Louis is an NFL team city that has no NFL team, because the Rams a few years ago moved to LA the same time San Diego Chargers moved to LA, leaving St. Louis vacant, and they're probably bitter. So St. Louis has rallied around their franchise, whoever's playing, and my understanding is they get crowds of like 25 to 35,000, which by NFL standards is not great, but for this league is top notch. So all you other cities, the 7 of you other cities, get on it, get this thing going. Because listen, we want this podcast to last. I mean, obviously, as the much younger brother here, I've got decades to live. So.
Yeah, and going back to St. Louis in general, I mean, they loved the Rams, and I remember I don't have much experience with the St. Louis Browns, but when it comes to the Rams, when they left, it was a very, very emotional exit from the city. The city did not want to see them go, and they kind of fought to keep the team. And I think if the NFL were to expand, St. Louis has been thrown around as a team for an expansion team. I've seen a lot of people into the city of St. Louis wanting to bring a team. I remember when the Chargers were moving from San Diego to LA, there was a little group of people in St. Louis that were trying to get them to come there. And St. Louis in this spring league, they were very good last year. They were 7-3 and they had a lot of success. So I think that team is one to watch. And a little shout out to Jason Tatum in the NBA. I mean, he was already repping the team in his locker. He had a shirt. I forget if it was a shirt or a jersey, but he was representing the team in his locker. He's a St. Louis native. And so the whole city is getting involved, and it's already seeing the mainstream a little bit.
You know what, St. Louis? Stop with the NFL. They've mistreated you now. Just get behind the UFL. And by the way, anyone in St. Louis, if you want to come on the show, we're looking to guess who are insiders and know their teams back and forth. We don't have big egos here. We want while we're learning, we want to get the best quality for you all as well. Hey, we got a comment, so let's go check this out.
I was gonna say, I see a nice good day from Christopher Harris. It's great to see you, Christopher Harris. Good day to you too, sir.
That is the executive consultant himself, integral in forming this show and in the UPR brand, and my partner Monday nights on the Raw Review show, except for last week and the first week and the next 4 weeks because he's otherwise engaged. But for the long haul, he is. So thank you, Chris, for joining us. So some of the other things, the kicking and touchback rules. So touchbacks on kicks, punts, or kickoffs will be placed at the receiving team's 25-yard line. Any punt that goes out of bounds inside the receiving team's 25-yard line will be considered a touchback and then placed at the 25-yard line. So none of those strategic things where you try to have a ball angle out and fall out at the 3-yard line. It's not going to work. So I guess the place kicker role is a little bit less important.
Yeah, and I believe this also goes to punts as well. I believe they don't want punters angling it inside the 10 and the 5. I mean, that's what really makes a great punter. And I believe that also is going to be the same rule in effect. If it's if it's not in the end zone and it's under the 25-yard line, they're going to bring the ball out to the 25-yard line. But what's also interesting about this kickoff rule, and it's kind of controversial to me, is the NFL did all this independent research back in the day about how unsafe kick returns were and how it was the most head traumatic play in the game. And they kind of moved to eliminate it. And this past year, we highlight the Super Bowl last month, 0 kick returns were returned the entire game, which was the first time ever in the entire Super Bowl's history. And so when you look at the XFL, they're actually taking a completely opposite approach. They did their own independent research, and they found that there really was no difference in the rules that the NFL implemented to try and avoid head contact. They found that it was just as risky. And so they're actually moving the kickoffs back from the 35-yard line to the 20-yard line. So now you have to kick the entire length of the field to get the ball down. And so kind of like I mentioned earlier with the extra points, accuracy is no longer what this league is looking for when it comes from kickers. You're really looking for sheer power. You want somebody that's going to get the ball all the way down the field. And you mentioned it earlier, this was a little bit of a controversial rule, but you saw Cavante Turpin. He was with the Cowboys in the NFL year. He was a great kick returner, and he came from, I believe it was the XFL. Mm-hmm. And because of that return ability, he was able to be part of that team that made it to the playoffs. Absolutely. So kick returns now are actually going to become much more prevalent. You're going to see a lot more returns, and the field position game is now going to be completely altered, and we'll talk about it later, but the onside kick rule has changed as well. So there's a lot of changes in special teams in this league.
Right. And it's funny because I could see special teams coaches telling their special teams coverage team to sort of hold back a little bit to try to trick the punt returner or the kickoff returner into trying to receive it so that you can try and tackle them, to turn the motors on and then tackle them behind the 25-yard line. But I could also see the coaches saying, do not catch that ball. Do not catch that ball unless it's landing in front of the 25-yard line. Don't touch it. It's not worth it. So that's also going to be a coaching decision, I guess. How if you have players that it seems early have NFL talent and made it to NFL teams, you may feel like letting them go, like Devin Hester and Deion Sanders in the day. But if you have just average talent, you may say again, don't touch that ball, son. Don't touch it.
But you know what? It might be interesting with that extra 15 yards that the kick's going to start from back. That's a long distance that the kickoff team's going to have to cover to try and make that tackle on the returner. So it might make it so that there's almost no reason to not return it. It's going to be very interesting to see how that dynamic plays out, how the strategy gets implemented, and what's the actual results going to be, because it's going to be very different than what you're traditionally used to seeing when it comes to kickoffs.
Absolutely. And there must be lawyers in that room, because they also said all non-kicking touchbacks will also be placed at the 25-yard line. So I guess they were planning for if someone's going to try to out clever you and throw the ball instead of kicking it, or something like that. So don't think if you don't punt it or don't, and you throw it instead, that's going to work either. It will not. It's going to go back to the 25, just like anything else. It's going to be a touchback. So then we go into the alternate possession options. So there are onside kicks allowed at any time during the game. Is that different than the NFL? I mean, we don't see onside kicks at any time during the game except in extreme circumstances, but is that different? And why do you think they're making that expressly known?
No, it's not different. I think they want to make it expressly known just because the second part of the rule is so specific and it's so different. So I think they just want to create a little bit of a differential. You can do an onside kick at any point in time. Again, that kickoff's going to start at the 20-yard line. So if you're onside kicking it, it might not be very opportune for you, because you're going to be kicking it to about the 30-yard line. And if you don't recover it, the opposing team only has 30 yards to go. But the second part of the rule is within the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, you can do a 4th and 12 play from the 28-yard line, I believe. And so that's where the rule becomes differently, where you can actually put your offense on the field for one play. And if you get that first down, you keep possession. So I think that's why they really specifically honed in on that at any time part of the rule.
Well, I'm inventing two plays, one called the Vanguard left and the Vanguard right, where it's one of those 4th and 12 situations, and you put your fastest, biggest guys on one side of the field. You do an onside kick. Hope that it goes. You get your big guys to push away all of their people, so that it goes 10 yards and then bounces another 2 and 2.5 or 2 and 1 inch, and you recover it, around after 13 yards and make that. So that, I'm not sure if that's a good idea or not, but in my mind, it works out very well.
Well, those 4th and 12 plays are actually going to be with the offense, to my understanding. You're going to actually put your offense on the field as opposed to kicking it off from the 20. Your offense will come out on the 28. So it's going to be your offense.
Kick at any time, so it can be your offense. So you can still listen. There's still a chance. You're telling me there's a chance.
There is a chance. There is a chance.
Okay. So all right. So teams will have the alternate option to retain possession in the fourth quarter, but each team will get a chance. If the team is tied or behind during the fourth quarter, it may elect to retain possession after a score with a 4th and 12 from its own 28 line. So there's a lot to break down there. My head hurts a little bit from this. So tell us, what does this mean?
Yeah, so that's basically what we were kind of talking about a second ago. That's going to be the alternative to an onside kick. You could always kick it if you want, but especially with these kickers not taking extra points and being more power focused and accuracy focused, I don't think you're going to see a lot of kickers actually physically kicking an onside kick. You're going to have your offense on the field, and you have one chance to get 12 yards, and you get those 12 yards, you get to keep the ball. You don't get those 12 yards, the other team gets the ball, and similar to an onside kick, they're going to have great field position. So I think that rule is very interesting. I'm not sure how much it's going to get utilized. I personally don't think, if I was a coach, obviously it comes down to game situation and time and setting, but I personally don't think that I'd want to risk my team. Like if you get sacked on that 4th and 12, the team's going to have the ball in the red zone already, essentially. So it could become very risky and something that I'm not sure is going to be opportune for teams, but it's definitely an intriguing, little rift to the sport, because that is giving you an opportunity to earn your way to keeping the ball. And if you're down maybe 3 possessions, what's the difference between 3 and 4? Maybe just run your best 12 to 15-yard play and see what you can do and throw the ball downfield. And that can add a little bit more offensive excitement for sure.
Absolutely. And there's another rule here, which is also sort of interesting, that you can have 2 forward passes, but the ball can't cross the line of scrimmage at any time. So I guess these would be these passes where you see the quarterback throw the ball a little bit forwards to a wide receiver, I guess anywhere, but usually it's on the sideline. Now, in the past, we've seen the wide receiver in the NFL, they can throw the pass also. But I guess in this case, they can flip it back to the quarterback and they can make a second pass. Or it's one of those plays where maybe a quarterback does like a screenplay or looks like a screenplay to a running back, and it could be the oh crap moment where they realize it's going to break down, and instead they throw it to the open tight end and or slot receiver. Or maybe it's an alley-oop where, or a flea flicker where the running back flips it back to the quarterback and they go for a big pass. Again, risky, depends on your trust in your offense. Or like you said, if you're down 3 possessions, why the hell not razzle dazzle a little?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about this is, and again, we'll talk about coaches and stuff more, but Coach John DeFilippo is one of the coaches, and he was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles when they did the Philly special. So there are the coaches in here that can really get creative and find ways to utilize these rules. I think in particular, this rule is interesting. I'm not sure how much we'll actually see it incorporated in playbooks. Essentially, in the NFL, if you throw the ball forward in any way, shape, or form, that ball, you have to run it. You can't throw it again. Right. Now, you can throw a little screen pass to a receiver, but the receiver no longer needs to be behind the quarterback. The receiver can be in line or even in front of the quarterback, just not in front of the line of scrimmage, and then can still pass the ball forward again, which is very interesting.
Beyond the line of scrimmage, because I guess front depends on your perspective.
Yes, but I think I'm not sure how much you really see that incorporated. I think especially with a lot of defenses wanting to play press coverage, I'm not so sure how much you'll get quarterbacks throwing it out wide for a second pass. Maybe you'll get little like guys coming in motion and flipping it forward and then them doing something, whether they're running across and throwing it or tossing it back to another guy in motion. But what I think is really interesting and where this might get put into practice is on those little plays where, it might be a screen pass that hits the ground. And before you would just see everybody just fall on top of the ball because otherwise it's a fumble. Well, now if the offense picks up the ball and the ball still hasn't crossed the line of scrimmage, you can pick it up and throw it. And so that gives you the opportunity, instead of just falling on it, even for something as simple as picking it up and throwing it out of bounds and throwing it away. So there's going to be some riffs, and I think it'll be interesting to see how teams use it. And I think that there's some very creative and intelligent football coaches that probably have ideas better than the ideas that are floating in my head. And maybe they'll get put into practice. But this is definitely something that's going to be very different. And again, it could add some excitement. I mean, you could really see some intriguing plays where you have some guys that traditionally would not be throwing the ball down the field, and you might get some plays that are very different looking than what you see in the NFL today.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like a high risk, and it's going to have a lot of moving pieces, which is pretty tough, especially with the teams that are reconstituted. But I think it might come to known as the oh crap play, when something breaks down and you want to throw a second forward pass or whatnot. There's another thing. Listen, if I'm a coach and I'm sneaky and going back to all the teams are practicing and scrimmaging together in Arlington, that I would do a lot of these plays in those practices and scrimmages in formations that you're going to use for more traditional plays, so that when the defenses see you, they think that you're going to do something tricky and they're all over the place, and then you just run a regular play. Or if you can or if they're sure that you're, the boy who cried wolf, that you're going to run a regular play, that maybe you do, bring that out of your toolkit and go for it. But as you said, the coaches know football and strategy far better than you and I do. But if none of you thought about that before, and you're listening, and now you're like, that's pretty evil. That's why I'm Evil Dose. And you're welcome. You're welcome, coaching staffs. So what else do we have here? Defensive pass interference will result in a 15-yard penalty or the spot of the foul if the foul occurred less than 15 yards downfield. So that's pretty simple. It's similar to the NFL rule, not exactly. And there's one part of that, and then I'm going to let you clarify whatever mess I just made. The intentional defensive pass interference will result in a spot foul when it's beyond 15 yards downfield, which I believe is also similar to the NFL rule. But like I said, you can clean up that mess on IL Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, this rule is really going to be a hybrid. It's combining kind of the NFL's rules with college football's rules. Essentially, if there's a defensive pass interference under 15 yards, that's instantly going to be a 15-yard penalty. If the foul occurs further down the field, it's still going to default to a 15-yard penalty, but now the refs have the ability to make a judgment call. And this is where I don't love the rule, and it's going to be interesting to see where it actually comes into play. But the refs have a judgment call if it was deemed intentional to make it a spot foul. So I'm really not sure how you make that call. I mean, if two guys get tangled up and the cornerback kind of trips the receiver, I don't know how you exactly determine that it was an intentional move. It could have been from a slip or whatever. But if the refs deem it intentional, it becomes a spot foul. Otherwise, it defaults to being a 15-yard penalty. So it kind of takes the best parts of the college football rule with the best parts of the NFL rule and then gives all the power to the refs. And I think that could lead to some controversy, but we'll see. We'll see.
And we're gonna dovetail on that because we're gonna talk about the replay reviews and coaches challenges, but that's gonna be right after this break. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Vinny, please rant on.
Okay, I'm gonna give you guys the benefit of the doubt that the promo was good. Okay, the promo worked tonight. All right, I'll give you that. But I'm gonna give you the fact that Peraza was correct when she says delusional shame is what she is. She comes out flocking like a fucking bird, like a bird coming down from Philadelphia. She comes out flocking like what the fuck are you flocking about? Like what are you doing? I mean, if this is our AEW world champion, shame on AEW for this shit. Shame on him. Because I'm gonna tell you what, she had a good promo tonight, but every other night that she's on there, I want to vomit and crush my penis with a fucking hammer.
You know, I think we all want that.
That's how bad. That's how bad this is, bro. That's how bad it is. Honestly, I mean, come on. If I have to watch somebody like Goldust,
do we have TVMA that we can?
I have to watch somebody like Goldust, split screen, half black and white, half color.
Chris, you have your commercial.
And then she wrestles in black and white. What is this shit? This is garbage.
She wrestles in Technicolor, by the way. She doesn't wrestle.
Oh, Technicolor.
Yeah.
It's garbage.
Yeah, and what is flocking? I was afraid to ask. Is that a word
she
you
was
kids
fucking
use?
flocking.
What the
she
fuck
came
does
out
flocking
like
mean?
with wings, like she was a fucking bird. Go back to the nest.
Okay, so for those of you who are not used to UPR, we can curse. We're not. We're choosing not to here on sports, but yeah, flocking apparently is acting foolishly. And it's actually become a word that we use. And listen, I just want to pat myself on the back again because that was one of my greatest timelines ever. Usually you think of a great line afterwards. And when he said he wanted to vomit on his penis and crush it with a hammer, and I said, I think we all want that. And still to this day, Vinny, I still want you to do that. I think that would be wonderful. So thank you very much. That's Vinny Laspada, who will be my co-host this Monday night around 11:15 p.m. right after Monday Night Raw on UPR Wrestling. So here we go, back into the UFL. Replay reviews. So designated members of the officiating department may stop a game at any time before the ball is next legally put into play to review a play if the play is reviewable. There is reasonable evidence to believe an error was made in the initial ruling and would have a direct competitive impact on the game. That's a lot of factors for a ref or official to try to figure out at some time, so a lot of discretion there. These reviews can be made from a secure location separate from the side of the game. I guess we're talking about the home office or up the booth upstairs, as they say. Any call or non-call related to player safety is also subject to review at any point during the game, as well as any officiating rule in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter or overtime that is obviously incorrect, okay, and will have a significant impact on the outcome of the game. Woo! Huh. Okay.
A lot of words.
Sure was. Make that make sense.
Well, I mean, when you're looking at it, I think for the sports fans out there, I'd like to liken this to VAR in soccer, or I guess football.
Yes.
VAR, they kind of have the power to step in where they deem necessary. So where it comes into play with the UFL is any play that is deemed reviewable, because there are some fouls that are unreviewable, which honestly, I don't love that rule, but that can be something that gets changed in the future. UFL, let me know, reach out. But the rulings that are deemed reviewable at any point in time, that independent third party can go and make a review and stop the game. Now, if it's for player safety, doesn't matter what happened, it's reviewable no matter what. Player safety is first. Now, within the last 5 minutes, it does not matter whether the penalty is a reviewable or unreviewable penalty. That can be reviewed by the independent third party. And that's where, to me, it gets very similar to VAR. In those clutch moments in a soccer game, if it has any impact on a goal, VAR has the authority to overarchingly stop the play and make a ruling. So in these last 5 minutes in crunch time, It's going to be very similar to VAR, where they use the word obvious. It's going to be very, very similar to the defensive pass interference. It's going to be very up to interpretation, and it's going to give a lot of power to the referees. But if that third-party operator who is overseeing these reviews deems it obvious, any play can be stopped and reviewed for penalties. And this basically ensures that, you know how the NBA has those last 2-minute reviews? It essentially eliminates the need for those. Any key play that has a determination on the outlook of the game can be reviewed if necessary. So
everybody saw me nodding there about the NBA rule. Honest to God, people, I haven't watched an NBA game in probably a decade. So I'm just nodding. I'm Bulgarian right now. When I nod, it means no.
NBA is better in the playoffs anyways.
So I've heard. Listen, I gave up most sports for podcasting. It's just so happening I'm reconciling these two things together. The coaching challenges. So each coach may challenge a ruling, including fouls or potential fouls, which I don't know what a potential foul is, one time during the course of a contest. I mean, does that mean that the coach can challenge whether an independent ref is deciding to review something? Can the coach go, I veto or I challenge your challenge?
No, the challenge doesn't really change to my understanding. It's just going to be, a typical challenge. What actually, I don't love it, but they actually reduced the total challenges from 2 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
So in the NFL, you get 2 challenges, and if you get the first 2 right, you actually can keep challenging more. But in the UFL, you only get 1 challenge. But it's going to be the traditional challenge to my understanding. It doesn't matter if the play on the field was given a ruling. It can very easily just be, a play that there was no call and the challenge flag gets thrown to review it to see if there was. So it's a very much the traditional challenge. And hello, Charmaine Murray. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, let's check in sometimes. Now that review, by the way, you can only make that challenge if you have at least 1. Hi, Charmaine. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your consistent support here on all UPR networks. Very much so. Thank you. So if you have 1 timeout remaining, so if you're out of timeouts, coach's challenge is abrogated, and that's because, of course, if you're wrong, you lose a timeout. So
thank you for clarifying that, because if you don't have a timeout, there's nothing for you to lose. There's no reason for you not to challenge. So that kind of gives it the checks and balances there.
Well, you're welcome, but you've been doing the heavy lifting and explaining the rules. So thank you for that. So a successful challenge won't result in the loss of a timeout, which is good, I think, anyway. But again, as we just said, if you're unsuccessful, you lose your timeout. Now, this is a wrinkle. I have not independently confirmed it, but over the course of the last 2 weeks or so, I've listened to a lot of UFL podcasts. And by the way, there aren't a lot of them out there, which is one of the reasons why we're doing this. I only found about 6 or 7. I think some of them were just different episodes from the same show, but I have subscribed to all of them, listened, and at least one of them who seem to be more insiders or super fans, but most of them seem to be sort of, I'll just call them corporate back podcasts. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but insiders. They said that if the coach issues a challenge, but the refs were going to challenge it anyway or review it anyway, the coach still loses the challenge. Now, again, I haven't independently verified it, but if they're correct, you could see coaches acting too quickly and losing their challenge ability, assuming they still have a timeout.
And you know what? I would have to look into that as well. That does sound a little odd. It throws a little wrinkle in there. But I guess it's just another level to the game that they're going to try and test out here.
Yeah, and we'll put a pin in that, and obviously we'll see if that is in fact even true or not, or if it just was interpretations. All right, overtime is going to consist of alternating attempts to score from the opponent's 5-yard line with no kicks allowed. I don't know why kicks would be allowed, because there doesn't seem to be an extra point. So I don't quite understand that at all. It will be a best-of-3 format, or until the winner has been determined. So I guess it's sudden death, sort of like penalty kicks, but it's from the 5-yard line. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, and I think this is something that I've been trying to kind of find a direct comparison for, because it is definitely different. It's more similar to the college football overtime format, but a little bit more controlled, I would say. Essentially, it's just a shootout. It's a shootout from in close. Each team is guaranteed to touch the ball, and it's best of 3 rules. So if both teams score a touchdown on their first try, then it's best of 3, and then I guess it becomes best of 5, best of 7, best of 9, and keeps going until we have a definitive winner. So I think this is actually going to be pretty intriguing. I think it's going to make it I think very similar to PKs. I think it kind of eliminates, again, going back to soccer, I think a lot of people don't really see the benefit of having 2 15-minute halves in overtime. It kind of takes out that overtime period and goes straight to the penalties and straight to the action, where it really is do or die.
I think that you were absolutely right with this one. All right. So I think we talked about the roster cuts, but if not, today is March 10th. So today is a day that they have to cut from 75 players to 58. Ultimately, there's going to be one other cut down to 50. So, I guess injuries and if you feel like someone was cut that was stronger than what you existing have there might be a lot of movement going on. There will be scrimmages starting. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the March 30th is the start of the season. The season terminates in, I believe, the second week of June with the championship game. The favorites seem to be the Birmingham Stallions with the St. Louis Battlehawks and the DC Defenders. And these are by Vegas odds, by the way, coming in second and third. And Arlington, the XFL champs, getting a little bit of disrespect there, coming in fourth. After that, it seems to be a little bit more distant. So I don't know. When we have to pick our team, we'll decide what if we like the underdog or if we like sort of the wild card razzle dazzle team, the more unpredictable, or if we're going to go with the safer picks. We'll talk about some of the notable coaches. I think you mentioned Bob Stoops. And the only thing I'll add to that, yes, I'm very familiar with Oklahoma. I used to do business in Oklahoma, and for better or for worse, I've been to the great state of Oklahoma probably at least 20 times, a couple just driving through, but a few times where I've been to Oklahoma City, Ada, Tulsa. So I know that, and the reason I mention that is because I'm pretty sure that Oklahoma is one of the teams that use the Wildcat periodically, and it seems like this might be a league where they might use the Wildcat.
Yes, and I think if you really look at their roster, that team has the ability to do a lot of different things. And what's interesting, and we'll talk about the roster more in the future episodes, as we mentioned, but I think that team, they have a bunch of former Oklahoma players on that roster and big guys, offensive linemen, defensive linemen. So he really wants to build it from the inside out and kind of give you that traditional team. And I think they're going to be very aggressive and fun to watch. But as we go through these teams, that's Arlington. Their general manager is Rick Mueller. I'll be honest, I haven't gotten to spend too much time researching a lot of these guys, but they do have a number of coaches, 2 that are notable, Chuck Long and Scott Spurrier. Those guys come from long lineages of football. And most of these teams, I'm doing some math in my head.
Howie Long's son?
Yes, sir.
And Steve Spurrier's son, obviously, from Florida Gators fame and the Redskins. So so there you go. Okay.
So these are guys from long lineages. You'll see Spurrier as their special teams coordinator, and then Chuck Long is going to be their offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, and wide receivers coach. It seems like each of these teams have about 6 or 7 assistant coaches with their head coach, so about an 8-member staff plus a general manager for each team. Looking at Birmingham, Skip Holtz. I'm forgetting who he was a head coach of, but
Lou Holtz was the coach of Notre Dame for a million years. Legend. Skip Holtz, you know what? I can't remember who he was a coach.
I think it was the 49ers, now that I'm thinking about it, but I might be wrong. All I remember is that he had to go to the NFL to get approval to wear a suit to honor his father, and he wanted to wear the suit and tie on the sideline. So that kind of is what makes him special. And their coaches, no disrespect to any of them, I really don't recognize any of their names, but their general manager is Zach Potter, and I'm forgetting the connection with him, but that's a name that is very familiar to me, and I feel like that has a football lineage as well. And you'll see a lot of people throughout this league that might not have established careers themselves, but they are family members, and they were in college, and they are now in this professional league trying to establish themselves. And hopefully some of these coaches, because there's a lot of coaches with potential, can make it to the NFL. And one of those coaches – sorry.
But by the way, folks, I want to clarify my groan. My groan was not about Skip Holtz requesting that of the NFL. My groan was that he had to request that of the NFL. Yes. And I believe Mr. Potter, I believe you know him from Crittage and from Harry Potter. I think he made his fame as a coach at Hogwarts. And I think he was on Slytherin, the champion. So I could be wrong about that, but
No, you're wrong about the last part. He is definitely not Slytherin. Slytherin's the enemy. They're the other house.
well, it is evil
thinking-
does. So,
I mean, you probably would be in Slytherin, but Harry most definitely was not in Slytherin. Harry was the good guy.
that's true. Yeah.
But yes, Zach Potter is their general manager. And when we talk about the Birmingham Stallions, we'll make sure we have a little bit more background on him. I know he comes from some sort of football lineage of some sort. But moving forward, when you look at the DC Defenders, their head coach is Reggie Barlow. And this guy probably is the highest potential coach that is in the entire league. He's still pretty young, a former NFL player. He did very good with the DC Defenders last year, taking them to a very good season with a winning record. And he now comes in with a very experienced defensive coordinator, a name that most would probably recognize, in Greg Williams. I remember him best as his time as the Browns defensive coordinator. He spent some time as the Jets defensive coordinator. He's a very well traveled coach.
You're forgetting the team.
Oh,
the Ravens.
Oh, yeah, that team. Yeah, those guys. But he came from, I believe it was the Marv Lewis chain. He coached under Marvin Lewis with the Ravens, and then kind of made his career.
He was with the Bills. He was a head coach for the Bills. He was unsuccessful, and then he became the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. I'm not sure if it's the years match up exactly, but yeah.
But I do remember him being a very aggressive defensive coach. He likes to send a blitz. He likes having a good aggressive D line. And the DC Defenders, I mean, their name's the Defenders. And I actually think you mentioned them as, I think, the third biggest favorite to win. I actually think they might be the most talented team in the entire league. And I think they might have the best coach potentially, Reggie Barlow.
One of the things about Reggie Barlow is in his NFL career, he played a lot of positions on the offense, and that seems tailor-made to understanding the ramifications and coming up with clever plays and formations and things like that. And some of these rules we were talking about in this league. He was a running back, but he was also a slot receiver. He lined up at wide receiver. I think he even was an emergency quarterback at times. So Reggie Barlow was sort of like one of those slash types in the NFL, had a good career. And yeah, I mean, and he is young, and, that often translates to aggressive, but the DC Defenders did have a very solid defense. And apparently they added 2 players to their defensive front 7 who are highly touted. And so that defense is supposed to get even better, which is, which is one of the reasons I'm agonizing that towards choosing DC, but nobody needs to hear me suffer again with myself. So yeah, who else we got?
Yeah, and just to mention there too, they bulked up a little bit, but they also got some additions in their secondary, and we'll talk about that more in the future. But 2 guys that are NFL, I mean, pretty regularly known from NFL fans, DJ Swearinger and Garyon Conley, who was a former first-round pick. Swearinger played for a number of teams for like 8 or 9 years. Great physical in the box safety. You have Conley, who was a first-round pick, and he needed some defense on his way out of the NFL, but he's now trying to reinvigorate his career after some problems. And so they really are going to be a strong team. And even though their head coach's offense, having Greg Williams there is going to allow them to play an aggressive form of defense. And I think they can be a very complete team.
Yeah. Who else we got?
Well, if we move to the next team, and I lost my place here because I also am cheating here. I've been referring back to some notes I have here on my phone, but next is going to be the Houston Roughnecks. Their head coach is going to be C.J. Johnson, another guy. I believe he also played in the NFL. He was their coach of the Houston Gamblers, I believe, last year, so he has some experience as a head coach. And their general manager is Lionel Vital. Now they don't have as many notable names when it comes to their coaching staff, but this is a team that, at least from one of the podcasts I watched and doing some research, they actually think that this team has a lot of potential. It might have been a little bit of biasness, but this is a team that C.J. Johnson had some success last year as a head coach, and they're built for success as well. So they should be a rough team to play.
Right. And okay, so who else we got down the line?
Yeah, and moving forward, I think this team is one of the ones that you'll recognize some names here. It's the Memphis Showboats. We already mentioned Coach John DeFilippo, former offensive coordinator of the Eagles, the Vikings, quarterbacks coach. I mean, really highly regarded in his work with quarterbacks. And their general manager is a guy with the last name Polian, Dennis Polian, Bill Polian's son. So another guy with football lineage. Another guy that they have here is Doug Martin, not the former running back, but very experienced coach, as well as Jim Turner. I don't want to jump to conclusions and say he's related to Norv, but I do know he had an extensive coaching career as well. We'll say he's not related to Norv Turner until we can research that, but
we
very,
will
very experienced coach.
He's not the same Jim Turner who owned the bar Turner's in Federal Hill that I went to quite a bit during law school.
I mean, if he is, good for him, and let's
seriously.
get some free drinks, please.
Yeah.
But that is also a team, the Memphis Showboats, that they're going to be really fun to see. They have some fun quarterbacks, and Coach DiFilippo is great with quarterbacks. So we'll see what they do. And I think this is a team that you might see a lot of those trick plays with the rule changes from.
Ooh, we like that.
So I like that, and I
hate
think
it.
I mean, possibly. It depends on the result.
Right.
But the next team is the Michigan Panthers, and they now have to follow up the Detroit Lions, the team that never won a playoff game, the longest drought ever. And now there's a second team in Michigan looking for success, and they're coached by Mike Nolan, another very veteran coach, former Tulane head coach, I think most recently. And he has a lot of really good experience. Their general manager
he was the head coach of the Giants, the New York Giants.
Yes.
And he was also, I believe, was the defensive coordinator of the Ravens as well, and then maybe shifted to the offensive coordinator. So some more Ravens lineage. I think he also coached for Denver or bounced around. But yeah, Mike Nolan, definitely a name well known with a lot of NFL bona fides.
And I believe you're correct. I believe he was Denver's defensive coordinator for a period in time. And this is a team that they're going to be a very interesting team to watch, and that they're built by general manager Steve Kozar. They don't have as many big name coaches on their staff, but this is a team that I actually think expectations are going to be pretty high for them. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the Detroit Lions fan base imposing those expectations on them, but they're going to be a team that's going to be fun to watch. And Coach Nolan is a veteran coach, and he's going to have a lot of fun with them. So I think that's a team to watch. But this next coach that we're going to talk about, I think I
got a joke lined up for this one. So, Jake, I know that you are a religious scholar, correct?
Sometimes.
And you're familiar with the 10 Commandments, right?
Of course.
Are you familiar with the 11th commandment?
No. Can you educate me a little bit here?
Absolutely. Is thou shalt not start a new professional football league without hiring Wade Phillips as a head coach.
Oh, I should have been studying that my whole life.
Yes. There you go. So it's there. It's true, everyone. You can look it up yourself. It's in the Deuteronomy, Exodus 15.25. I know
it's in there somewhere. Somebody probably has a tattoo of the line somewhere. I mean, Wade Phillips is a guy that everybody knows of if you've watched football for a few years. The 76-year-old has not retired. I can't believe it. I'm 23 and I want to be retired. He's 76 and still working. So good for him. He's actually bringing in a lot of his former assistants under him to coach in some roles. But their general manager is Mark Lillibridge. And this is, of course, the San Antonio Brahmas that we're talking about. So I don't know if The Rock wanted Wade Phillips as his guy, but that's a defensive guy. As we know, The Rock was a defensive end in his playing days. So this is a guy that plays an aggressive style of blitzing defense.
So I have another joke. Okay,
let's hear it.
So Wade Phillips, The Rock approached Wade Phillips and he says, "Hey, Wade, do you want to be a coach for the San Antonio Brahmas?" And Wade Phillips went, he said, "It doesn't matter what you want."
And I don't think it did matter, because I think they already had Wade Phillips' name as a head coach for the league before they even asked him if he wanted to do it.
There you go. Like I said, thou shalt not. That's the 11th commandment. It is the law. So it is written, so it shall be. And in fact, it has been and is again. All that has occurred before shall happen again and has happened before. So there we go.
Yeah, and this is going to be on YouTube, right?
Yeah, it's on YouTube right now. It's on Facebook. It's on X. It's on Twitch. And it'll be there evergreen. And then I'm going to also download it as an audio podcast and publish that, maybe today or tomorrow.
Lovely. So for anybody that's watching this back and isn't watching live, let us know down below how we should verbiage this 11th commandment. We need to get this officially written out. So help us write that. We need some good words to make sure that Wade Phillips is forever remembered.
Extra credit for you if you actually carve it into a stone tablet. So, just saying. And you pay for shipping, no COD. Done. We know about you out there. Listen, I know about wrestling fans. I don't know about you football fans. I'm expecting more. Do better, people.
Yeah, do better, be better, and make sure you include Wade Phillips in your football startup.
Absolutely. So those are the notable coaches.
Oh, we got one more.
Oh, go.
We mentioned St. Louis, how
Mm-hmm.
they love football. We can't forget the St. Louis Battlehawks. They have another young up-and-coming coach in Anthony Becht, another former player. He has some coaching experience. I believe he actually coached the St. Louis team last year. I don't want to speak out of line, but he has a lot of good coaching experience. And he's another guy that probably could see himself make it to the NFL with a good showing here as a head coach. And they actually have, to me, some very intriguing coaches on their roster. But Dave Bowler is their GM, and they have the Gradkowski brothers on their coaching staff. They have Gino, the former offensive lineman, and Bruce, the former quarterback, both on their coaching staff. Gino is going to be their offensive line coach. Bruce, who I believe is the older brother, is the offensive coordinator. I hope he's the older brother because I would not want my little brother being my boss. But those two guys are going to be a part of the St. Louis coaching staff. And they actually have a very well-rounded coaching staff. And as you mentioned, the fans are behind them. So it's going to be very interesting to see what that team does.
Absolutely. And sorry, St. Louis. It's, I didn't mean to preempt you. I just lost track of the number 7, 8. So there you go. Because 7, 8, 9, I'm afraid of 7. Okay. There's another dopey joke. So as far as notable players, I'm actually going to let you do the serious ones. There are some familiar names. There's last name Amendola. Obviously, there's a Flacco there. We're very familiar with Joe Flacco. Still plays Joe Flacco. But there's a couple names. There's a guy named Boogie, and I'm sure it's because he's fast, or maybe that's his real name. I, of course, hope it's because he can actually get down and boogie, and he's an excellent disco dancer, maybe as good as me. And, of course, because of my show Garden of Doom, and obviously my religious scholarship, my favorite player name is obviously Isaac Darkangelo. So whatever team you are on, Sir Dark Angel, I'm heavily leaning towards that being my team, or at least you being my favorite player. Don't let me and the evil nation down, Mr. Dark Angel.
And so when we're looking at these players, we'll just segue straight into what we're supposed to go. Well, we'll try and keep this quick. This was only supposed to be an hour. We're already a little bit over, and we're going to go deeper into these teams. But we'll start with Birmingham. And I think Birmingham, there's a reason why they're the odds-on favorite. And if whoever's watching wants us to do maybe more of a betting-centric podcast, maybe we can talk about that a little bit as well, and maybe do some power rankings preseason as well.
Fantasy Football League too.
Yeah, and those are out there, and we don't have one. But if there are people that want to do a fantasy football league, maybe that's something that we can look into starting and having some fun with. But Birmingham, there's a reason why they're the odds-on favorites, not just because Skip Holtz is their coach, but they might have the most weapons and notable weapons out of any team. Jay Sternberger is a guy that you might recognize. He was a tight end that played in the NFL. They've got Victor Bolden, and another receiver that they have as well is Benjamin Victor, who played a little bit with the Ravens, Marlon Williams, who played at UCF, and Dion Kane, who played a little bit with the Colts, was a Clemson wide receiver. And all four of those guys are huge, big body, sure-handed possession receivers. So that's going to be really good for them, plus having Jay Sternberger. And then they also have Amari Rodgers, who his father actually is the wide receivers coach of the Ravens, and he was a third-round pick out of Clemson by the Packers. So they have a ton of weapons, and what's really impressive is they also have probably the best quarterback duo in the league. Adrian Martinez is a guy you might recognize if you're a college football fan, played with Kansas State. And then they also have Jamar Smith, who was their quarterback last year, who played at Louisiana Tech, and he's a very mobile quarterback. So they have a lot of fun there. And if you go over to the defensive side, they have guys too. Chris Orr. They've got Scooby Wright. Both of those guys are linebackers. Chris Orr's brother just became the Ravens defensive coordinator. More and more Ravens connections.
Scooby Snacks.
Yeah. And Scooby Wright was the heart of their defense last year. So they've got a really well-rounded team. And Carlo Kemp, I don't want to forget him. He's the guy that played at Michigan, a big DN. So they're a really well-rounded team. And that might be the team that we'll go into the most detail with today. But as we move forward, the Arlington Renegades, that's another team that we talked about as being a team that's very highly regarded. Bob Stoops' team. They have Luis Perez, as we mentioned earlier. He's returning, veteran quarterback. I believe he's about 29, so he's a little bit older for the spring league. We don't know if his potential really is at NFL, but he really kicked butt for them last year. I mean, he took them to the championship, and now they're really going around him and really building up a team. One of the names that really stuck out to me was Donald Payne. He's an off-ball linebacker. He was the all USFL linebacker selection last year. Mm-hmm. And before that, he was a Ravens special team ace. And then he went over to the Colts and did some really good work with the Colts as well. And when you look at that team, another big name that they have is Vic Beasley, a former first-round pick edge rusher. He played a number of years for the Falcons. And Marquette King, he was a punter that you saw with the Raiders for a number of years. So they have a lot of guys, and even just to mention a few other NFL guys, they have Adrian Ealy. He spent a little bit of time with the Ravens and bounced around, another one of those Oklahoma guys on Coach Stoops' team. And Drew Samia, another Oklahoma guy, but a big offensive guard. I'm forgetting his team that he played with last, but he bounced around the NFL a little bit as well. So they're really building inside out with a lot of talent.
Excellent. And some other notable players. I mean, A.J. McCarron might be the most notable player in the league. He was the Alabama quarterback, I believe. He was with the Bengals, and he actually requested his release to go back to the UFL. And Luis Perez, he actually, as I understand it, has won 3 championships in a row, which whatever leagues he was in. So obviously he's got that championship pedigree in these leagues, despite the rules being a little bit different. He's obviously been able to adapt. But my understanding is that he's got some competition, that they have a young quarterback that they're really excited about, and that might create a two-headed monster, and sometimes that works out, and other times it divides the team. So something to watch for a little drama.
Yeah, and that guy that you just mentioned is Lindsey Scott out of Incarnate Wood. I've never seen him play before, but from what I've heard, he's a very mobile quarterback with a lot of potential, and he's one of those guys that, if you're able to utilize him correctly, he might be really dangerous in those substitute extra points on the 2 and 5 yard line, being able to have him roll out and get some easy reads. So that's going to be an interesting battle to follow. But I'll be honest, I do expect Luis Perez as the guy. I think people always hate on Luis Perez in spring football leagues, and he just always finds a way to thrive and find success.
Yeah, I mean, I think with a new league and the first season, that going safe is probably the way to go. But then again, a lot of the rules in this league are sort of all about incentivizing not going safe. So I guess we'll see. Are there any other players that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I guess we can go a little bit quicker through the rest of these teams. Those are probably the top 2 teams on paper. And you mentioned A.J. McCarron, another guy in Jordan Teamu, another guy, he spent some time with the Chiefs. Those are some guys that are quarterbacks it's reported they're coming back, but they don't have official agreements that I've been able to find that they're like officially on rosters yet. Mm-hmm. So I think it's still a fluid situation. But Jordan Teamu, he's a guy that would be on the DC Defenders. He actually led them to a great year, and they're actually 9-0 at their home field, dating back the last 3 seasons. So they're actually a team, like I mentioned, that is going to be very good. And I mentioned Garyon Conley. Jordan Evans is a guy that spent some time as an off-ball linebacker with the Bengals. And Trent Harris, he spent some time around the league as a edge rusher. And when you look at Houston, they've got some big names. A guy that I actually really am excited to watch is Kenji Bahar. Little is known about Kenji Bahar, I feel like, but Kenji, he played at Monmouth. He actually was the quarterback for one of my high school football teammates. And he spent a little bit of time with the Ravens actually as well in training camp. And they actually have a number of pretty good targets there. So that should be a team that's interesting. Justin Hall is probably the notable name. He played very great for them last season. And Chris Odom's a defensive tackle as well. That's pretty notable that they have. But the most notable name there actually, now that I'm looking at it, is Reuben Foster. Reuben Foster, a former first-round pick out of the 49ers. So some big names. You go to Memphis and you look at them. They're going to be quarterbacked by Case Cookus, who was the USFL. I believe he was the all-pro quarterback for the USFL last year, but he had a lot of success last season. And on the defensive side, they have Dylan Moses, who was the number 5 player in his high school recruiting class. And he had some injuries. I think it was head and knee. He had a number of injuries when he was with Alabama, which kind of affected his NFL career because he was originally going to be a first-round guy. And we talk a little bit about cuts. One of the guys that they were expected to have and was supposed to be a huge part of their offense was Kennedy Brooks, who he actually got cut a couple of days ago. So they have a strong running back room, clearly, because Kennedy Brooks was a guy that was expected to perform. But looking at their team, they've got a guy in Dalen Mack. And really the guy that I wanted to highlight from their team is Vinny Papel. Do you recognize that name, Papele?
No. I mean, it sounds Samoan.
Well, you should, because his father is Vincent Papel.
Okay. From
the movie, I'm going to mess up the name of the movie.
Invictus?
Whatever that, I'm drawing a huge blank right now in the movie, but that football movie, he used to play for the Eagles. But whatever, he's the son of Vincent Papel, who there was a whole movie based around him. And so that's a guy, he played wide receiver at Delaware, and it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize him. We've got a couple more teams, so we'll keep going fast. Pita Tamo Penu. He's supposed to play for the St. Louis Battlehawks. He was a guy that was a big, long D-end, as well as some other guys like Hakeem Butler. He's a huge 6'5" wide receiver that played for the Cardinals for a while. And they also have Jacor Pearson, who was the top receiver last year in the XFL. So that's going to be an intriguing wide receiver core to pair with Max Borghi, who was a great running back out of Washington State. So it was fun watching him in college. Michigan, we'll go quickly through them, but they've got a lot of notable names. Breland Speaks, second-round pick from the Chiefs. Corey Coleman, who used to play for the Browns. He was a Biletnikoff Award winner in college, and he had a great year for them last year. They also have the running back from last year, Reggie Corbin. He was an all-USFL running back. And they have Shalom Luani, who he was also an all-USFL safety last year, and he had some experience in the NFL. So that team's going to be very intriguing, and their quarterback battle is going to be one to watch, as they have two guys, Brian Lewerke, who played at Michigan State, so a hometown guy, as well. And they also have Danny Etling. And Danny Etling was a guy that played under Tom Brady. He went around a couple practice squads. He was a starting quarterback for LSU. So those are two really successful quarterbacks that they have on their team. And last but not least, the San Antonio Brahmas. Their biggest name probably is Jack Cohen. And he's another big-name quarterback that Notre Dame had for a while. And some other guys on their roster, Bubba Bolden, a safety from Miami that played in the NFL. Cade Warner, Kurt Warner's son, not a quarterback, a wide receiver, but Cade Warner. Expect to see a lot of Kurt Warner in the UFL, and I have heard that they're going to try and bring him on some broadcasts and do some interviews with him. And last but not least, they have Cody Latimer in that wide receiver room, who he played a couple of years with the Broncos, and he was a guy that was supposed to be really good coming out of Indiana. So a lot of really highly regarded talents. And like we mentioned, guys like AJ McCarron, a two-time national champion winner, Jordan Teamu. There's some guys that aren't officially on rosters that I do expect to see on some of these teams. And it's going to be really fun. I think the best part of this is you have the talent pool of two different leagues with 8 teams. So 16 teams worth of talent now being condensed to 8. And a lot of the times you're seeing leagues expanding and the talent pool getting diluted. But in this league, it's the opposite. We're not diluting the talent. The talent is getting condensed, and there's going to be more on each team, and that's going to lead to a lot of fun.
Right, just diluting the number of jobs. But obviously, folks, somebody did their homework and somebody didn't. So if anybody knows Garden of Doom, my whole gimmick is that I have people come on to tell me about interesting things, so I don't actually have to learn them myself. So apparently I did this at the same time and sort of tricked Jake. And it's very clear that my next 2 weeks are going to be very easy because he already seems to know everything about these teams. So terrific. But yeah, next week we will do a deep dive into one division. The week after we'll do another deep dive. Folks, if you want to hear certain things, let us know. You can reach me at Icarus Fell MD. Or you know my real name. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me, I just told you, on X. And you can let us know what you think. Also at UPR, you can let us know if you want to hear things, if you want to hear about gambling, if you want to hear about fantasy football. We'll focus on things like that. If you have a preferred show length, do you like 90 minutes? Would you prefer an hour? I think that we'll try to get it down, but frankly, we didn't rehearse and we've never done a show before. So, we'll probably get smoother as well, but the time flew as far as I'm concerned. But we'll figure it out. And because of unpopular review, we're not set to any particular time length. So let us know if you want a longer show or shorter show. We're open to all suggestions. If you know somebody who might make a great guest that knows something about the team, insiders, we're open to all sorts of suggestions. So,
and if you have a podcast yourself for the UFL, let us know. Let's collaborate.
All right. Yes. Well, you can talk to Jake because he obviously knows more than I do about it. But no, yeah, we're both very open to those things. Anybody who knows me from Garden of Doom or Garden Views, very, very, very collaborative and very unselfish with content and, crossover, call them simultaneous shows or whatever. So with that, I think our first show was really good. I think we did really well. We really gave a really good overview and got deeper than I thought that we would, which is excellent. So I thank you for really diving into things, because I only went so deep, and you obviously went, you were mining for coal or gold, maybe diamonds.
I'm definitely looking for the diamonds. I got to pay the bills.
Excellent. Well, one player you missed, though, Anthony McFarland, the running back from Maryland. I'm surprised you forgot about him. But so I got a couple diamonds, too.
And Anthony McFarland's a stud.
There you go. So, all right, Jake, tell people where you can be followed and found if you want to be followed and found.
Yeah, I mean, follow me on Instagram, Jake Obi Lippman, or my podcast, Behind the Cage Door. Would definitely love to get some new followers over there as I attempt to relaunch that site or that page. Haven't really done an interview there for a few months, but I'm going to try and bring back some content that's more analysis, more breakdowns, maybe do some predictions, and talk about some of the hot topics in MMA. But I definitely love talking football. Obviously, I have my past with writing for the Ravens, so definitely feel free to reach out. I'm on Twitter, X, whatever it's called nowadays, Facebook, all under my name. So by all means, reach out. Would love to talk, and definitely want to hear what you guys think and what you guys want to see. So leave comments, reach out to us directly, and let's keep running this show up. Let's see how the season goes. I'm excited for some more football. You know, it's always a long few months in between the Super Bowl and the NFL season. So it's nice to have a filler here.
All right, well, thank you to everybody who watched. We had as many as I think 22 or 23 people at one point. I'm not sure if that's all platforms. Got a bunch of likes and thumbs up. So keep those coming. If you have an opportunity, please subscribe and hit notifications again. And if you can hit like, that really helps. And if you want to share it with people, this is a new league, so it's ripe for new fans, and it's a spring ball. And hopefully this is going to be, you know, a long time project. I mean, you know, this is America. We have an endless desire for new content and entertainment and sports. So here it is, easy to access. So, you know, please join us in this journey. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Jake. Thank you to everyone. And we're going to see you again next week, 4 o'clock, right here. We might have some new thumbnails. We might have some new logos. We might even have music. Who knows? We'll you know, this is very much an evolution. It's our preseason too. So if you have any closing words for everyone?
No, I just appreciate everybody for watching. If you did, hello to all the fans and maybe the family that tuned in. It's nice to see everybody, and just keep tuning in, week out. I believe this is going to be the time slot we stick with. So be ready for more stuff on the horizon.
Yeah. So if the family's watching, hi everyone, and you know, friends and all that, and strangers. I mean, listen. Of all things, strangers are probably the biggest surprise and the happy thing, because those are actually people interested in the show as opposed to just, you know, wanting to support us. But all are welcome.
And there are new UFL family.
Absolutely. New UFL family. Exactly right. Perfect way to end it there. Lippman, well done on the Lipp Men on UFL, proudly presented by Unpopular Review. Everyone, thank you. And of course, stay evil, my friends.